بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
All right, inshallah, we can start with our verse now. So now we have the ayah today, the ayah of debt. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه. All you who believe, and we mentioned the statement of Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. He said that whenever you hear the call, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, pay attention. You are either being called to a good to benefit you, or being called to abstain from a harm that will harm you. And so we all want to pay attention. This call is made to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to every believer. We're being addressed. And so that is the consciousness we want to read these verses with. Allah is speaking to me. And so what is our Rabb subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to the believers? All you who believe, إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ, when you take a debt, when you borrow, تَدَايَنْتُم is when you contract a debt, is the way they translate it here. So تَدَايَنْتُم is that when you exchange loans. تَدَايَنْتُم, you exchange a loan. Somebody loaned, and so you have two people. You have the creditor and you have the debtor, right? Or the person that owes the credit. And so these people are engaging in this ayah, they're engaging in a loan transaction. إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى, to a fixed time. And this is the nature of debt. Debts should never be without a fixed time. The nature of debt is that it should be because without a fixed time, then who's to say it's a debt, right? I mean, that means you pretty much gave it away. So you could say it is a loan, but to really clarify and identify it as a loan is that you assign a fixed time. And so the ayah says that تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِدَيْنٍ إِلَى أَجَلٍ مُسَمَّى, if you take a loan or contract a loan amongst yourself for a fixed period, write it down. فَاكْتُبُوهُ, write it down. And so here this ayah, the majority of our scholars say that it is lil-istihbab, it is sunnah and not wajib. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Umar radiallahu anhu, he took this ayah to be wajib. That any transaction, any loan that is borrowed must be recorded, must be written down. But the majority of our ulama said this is sunnah and it is not wajib. And so something we can add here, with money, people generally oppress each other when it comes to money. And this is captured in the verse in Surah Sad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنَ الْخُلَطَاءِ لَيَبْغِي بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. And many partners who share their wealth with one another oppress each other. And so subhanAllah, how often do we hear partnerships, loans, financial transactions between parties, individuals, brothers, relatives, that end up really bad. And somebody is oppressing the other, but the problem is everybody sees themselves to be the victim. Everybody sees themselves to be the victim. And so part of the reason this happens is the lack of attention to detail. There wasn't attention to detail, how money is going to be held, where it's going to be spent, and so on and so forth. These transactions occurred based on mutual friendship, and so they just assumed that everything would work out well, and it oftentimes doesn't work out well. There's an Arabic proverb that says, تَحَاسَبُوا تَآكَلُوا كَالْإِخْوَانِ وَتَحَاسَبُوا كَالْعُدْوَانِ. Eat with each other like brothers, but hold each other accountable with finances like enemies. And so this is a bit, extreme, but it is accurate. If we were to really act in that manner, it would prevent a lot of financial disagreements. Like, we're going into a partnership, let's really talk about what that partnership looks like, right? Where is the money going to be spent? How are profits divided? What is dividends versus salary? How is salary determined? All of these things have to be said, because if you don't, then you open the gateways for all types of misunderstandings to happen, and then people feel oppressed. Everybody had a different assumption, and sometimes it's very hard to say who's the oppressor and who's not. And so the lesson here is, especially with debt, if you take loans, record it. And today, alhamdulillah, you can simply record it with a text message. You can record it with a writing it down and using digital apps. So any type of writing fulfills that. If you like, and even if it's a small debt, if a brother loans another brother $100 or whatever, $50 or something, just be like, brother, I loaned you $50, or the debtor, the one that's taking the loan, should be the one to say, I owe you $50 that I borrowed from you today. That should be the one he should be the one to write it down, and that's actually in the ayah, that the one who owes the debt is responsible for recording it. Because in Sharia, you're innocent till proven guilty. That rule applies to Islamic law. This is called bara'atul dhimma. Bara'atul dhimma means you're innocent. You have no obligations or debt to anyone until there's an evidence to prove that you owe somebody a debt. And so if there is a transaction, the person who owes the debt should be the one to record that text or sign that document saying, I owe you X amount of money and to be repaid by that X, certain time. And so traditionally in the past, the Arabs, they weren't lettered. They were an unlettered people. They were qawmun ummiyun. They were an unlettered people. Writing and reading was not a common knowledge shared among the people. And so the verse now commands, فَاكْتُبُوهُ وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ كَاتِبٌ بِالْعَدْلِ. And somebody who is trustworthy should write, among you. So you should bring a trustworthy writer to record the contract. Why? Because writing wasn't a shared knowledge. It wasn't common knowledge. So the ayah is telling them, bring someone to record the contract. وَلَا يَأْبَ كَاتِبٌ أَن يَكْتُبَ كَمَا عَلَّمَهُ اللَّهُ. And the writer, if I don't know if there's a more formal term for that, but the writer, the one writing the contract, should not refuse to write the contract the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught him. And so here the person who's been given the knowledge to read and write, Allah is saying, you are morally responsible for writing you are morally responsible to write contracts for people. If you're requested to write contract and you're the only one that has that knowledge and skill to do so, then you are morally responsible and you should write the contract for them. Is that clear? And this is without compensation. Compensation is not required, although if it can be given if there are other people available. And so I'll explain this. In Sharia, we have something called communal obligation. And so this communal obligation is roles that some members of the community have to fulfill, such as having an imam, having a doctor, having a governor, having police, having, so on and so forth. Somebody writing, a lawyer, legal, representatives. And so these individuals have to be provided by the community. And the state is responsible for making sure that these people are compensated for. Islamically, the state is supposed to make sure that in every community there's an imam, there's a qari, there's a judge, there's teachers, there's doctors, and the state is responsible for providing. And this service should be provided to the people free of charge. At a minimum level, the state has to provide that minimum. And then beyond that, when there's a surplus of service, then individuals can charge people privately, and they can say, well, I'm providing the service, I charge for it. Yes, there's public services available, but you're seeking private services, and for private services, I require this fee. That should be kind of in the best situation possible. That is how it should be constructed. In reality, is it happening like that? Yes, in some roles, not in other roles. So here, the one who's able to write is being given the command to what? If you're called to write for the people and know that this is a command from Allah for you to provide the service to the people. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلْيُمْلِلِ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِ الْحَقُّ وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ وَلَا يَبْخَسْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. And so here, and the debtor dictate and fear God his Lord, and diminish not any aught of it. Do you see that part of the verse? My translation is not that great.
And let him fear Allah his Lord and not leave anything out of it.
And the debtor, is that what it says?
And let him, so i.e. the debtor,
Yes. And let him?
fear Allah,
No.
Lord,
No.
and not leave anything out of it.
No. Yes. And so the one that the debtor, the one that owes the debt, not the creditor, the one that owes the debt is the one that makes sure that he records everything accurately. He records the amount. He records the currency type. So this is something that came up. Somebody, said, I loaned somebody gold 5 years ago when gold was, at a price of $40 a gram. I don't know, $45, $50 a gram. And today, the market price for gold is $70 a gram. So do I have to pay them the value of the gold according to what the price was when I borrowed it? Or do I have to pay them the value of that gold according to the current price? You have to pay them exactly what you borrowed from them, the same format. So you took gold from them, you return gold to them. And if they accept value, they have the right to ask for the current value. If they accept value, they have the right to say, I want the current value of the gold. Otherwise, you are obligated to return to them the exact amount of gold that you took from them, regardless about the difference of price. And this can be with any item or merchandise. Maybe something a long time ago, I don't know, let's say Bitcoin, subhanAllah, right? Somebody's like, I'll loan you a couple Bitcoins, and, a few years ago, it might have just been a few $100s or something. And you come today, and the guy's like, hey, I need you to return my Bitcoin, and it's, tens of thousands of dollars. You have to pay whatever you borrowed, regardless of the value, the change in value. And so when writing the contract, you're supposed to record the amount. You're supposed to record the type of currency, US dollars, right? Whatever, European pound, Canadian dollar, whatever it might be. You record the currency type. You record the day, the time the wealth was borrowed, and when it is, especially when it's supposed to be repaid. It's a 6-month debt loan, a 1-year loan to be repaid by this month and time of the year. And so the debtor who's borrowing the money is supposed to make sure when he records this debt, he records all these details and doesn't leave any relevant information out. Wallahu alam.